6 foods to prevent leg cramps in seniors. Stronger, healthier muscles. On a chilly winter evening in Boise, Idaho, 74-year-old Helen Parker was lying in a comfortable armchair by the fireplace. As usual, she was reading an unfinished novel, listening to the wind rustling outside the window. But within minutes, her face contorted, her eyes filled with pain. She pulled her leg back, then leaned forward, trying to massage her left calf. A sudden cramp, so strong it felt like someone had pulled a string in her muscle. This was not the first time. The spasms came unexpectedly, at night, while she was sleeping, or even while she was just sitting still reading. Helen had thought it was old age, inevitable. But as time went on, they increasingly affected her sleep, her sense of security when she got out of bed in the morning. Helen is not alone. In many states such as Florida, Texas, Ohio, millions of seniors are facing the same problem, but very few people understand the root cause, and even fewer know that by simply changing a few dishes in their daily meals, they can completely reduce that pain. So, what is secretly destroying the feet of the elderly in the U.S.? And which 6 foods are considered by experts to be the most effective natural remedies to prevent cramps in old age? Helen's story is just the beginning. What you're about to discover next could change the way you think about muscle aging and, most importantly, help you or a loved one move with more confidence and freedom every day. If you have experienced the same situation as Helen, please share your story in the comments below. Maybe someone else needs your sympathy and advice. And if you have friends or relatives who are also experiencing this situation, please share this video with them. Sometimes, just one video can help change the quality of life. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on real health stories and scientific solutions in upcoming videos. Helen sat in the armchair, her legs shaking slightly from the cramps. As the clock ticked in her ears, her memory took her back to another time, a summer 10 years ago, when she and her husband, Richard, were still traveling together in an RV through the lush pine forest of Oregon. Back then, her legs were as steady as rocks, able to walk for hours without tiring. But since Richard died, the trip stopped. And slowly, like a leaf falling unnoticed onto the porch, Helen's legs grew weaker, and the cramps began to visit. At first for a few seconds, then for minutes. Then she began to fear sleep, fear the feeling of being woken in the middle of the night by a stabbing pain. And what she feared most was not the pain, but the loss of freedom. Helen told no one. Like many elderly people, she thought, I must be getting old. No one can help it. But one morning, while sipping tea with her niece, a nurse, she blurted out that she often gets cramps at night. The granddaughter, Emily, put down her teacup and smiled. Grandma, you might just be lacking potassium and magnesium. Are you eating enough muscle-building foods? Helen was surprised. Is there really anything that can help? She asked. Emily nodded. And from that day, a new journey began. The next day, Helen went to the supermarket. In her shopping cart, for the first time in years, there was a bunch of bananas. She didn't really like bananas, but she remembered her 30s, when she was a primary school teacher, and she always ate one every morning before class. This time, she sliced a banana into her morning oatmeal. To her surprise, after just a few days, she began to notice a difference. The cramps lessened. She no longer woke up in the middle of her sleep. And one night, she slept through the night, for the first time in months. The seemingly ordinary golden fruit actually contains more than 400 milligrams of potassium, exactly what Helen's body lacks. Not only that, bananas also contain magnesium and vitamin B6, which help nerves function smoothly, transmitting signals smoothly to muscles. It's no coincidence that American athletes often eat bananas on the field because they know it's an effective natural weapon against cramps. Helen began to talk to bananas every morning. Some days she baked them with cinnamon. Some days she sliced them into smoothies with almond milk. And gradually, bananas became more than food. They became memories, hopes, old friends rediscovered in the journey of old age. The following days passed in the sweet silence of an Idaho winter. Helen began to keep a journal, an old habit from her teaching days. She wrote down the food she tried, the night she was no longer woken in the middle of the night, and the morning she could get out of bed without holding onto the edge of the dresser. She called the book Foot Diary, and by chance it was from that notebook that she reconnected with an old friend, Thomas Evans, a man of the same age living in Austin, Texas. They had worked together at a charity 20 years ago, but since Thomas's wife died of cancer, he had become largely withdrawn. No Facebook, no letters, just emails. Yet when Helen sent him a few pages from her notebook, Thomas responded within 6 minutes. I also get cramps, usually in the mornings after gardening, but I thought it was just sitting for too long. Now I realize I haven't eaten anything with magnesium, he wrote. From then on, they talked more often, not just about old age, but about old memories, forgotten moments. And then, one Tuesday, as the March sun was just beginning to creep over the back fence, Thomas wrote, I bought spinach today. For the first time in my life, I remember Grandma saying it's good for the muscles. Thomas's small kitchen was stocked with cold cuts, sandwiches, and strong coffee. But since his wife died, the food had lost its flavor. He ate because he was hungry, not because he wanted to. And then spinach, a vegetable he had once considered dietary, appeared as a skeptical experiment. The first time, he threw it in a pan with a little olive oil, sprinkled with sea salt and black pepper as Helen had suggested. Surprisingly, it was easier to eat than he had expected. Not bitter, not mushy, just fragrant and moist. But what surprised him even more the next morning, he didn't have any cramps. For the first time in weeks, his rope-like calves didn't ache as much as before. He repeats the dish 3 times a week. Spinach, which not only provides nearly 24 milligrams of magnesium in a cup, also serves as a sign that his body is still resilient if he knows how to take care of it. Gradually, Thomas began to clean up the backyard. He planted more vegetables, bought a set of light weights, and strangely, he found meaning in the little things: watering plants, cutting vegetables, standing in the sun for long periods of time without knee pain, and not having to massage his calves at night like before. One evening, Thomas sent Helen a photo of himself holding a plate of scrambled eggs and spinach with the caption, "My new friend, green leaves," Helen laughed. She printed out the photo and pasted it on the next page of her foot diary. Then she wrote down a line. There are things we have ignored all our lives just because we thought they weren't for us, but who knows? Maybe that's a small door leading us back to our old selves. That night, Helen sat by the window, opened Thomas's email, and stared out. Snow was falling heavily on the roofs across the street. The street lights were blurred in the fog. She let out a soft sigh, not sad, not happy, just a strange peace that crept into her heart as she realized. Somewhere, an old friend was walking more easily thanks to a bunch of greens, and somewhere else, thousands of miles away, Jamal Carter, 68, sat in his 9th-floor apartment on Chicago's South Side. In front of him was an old photo frame, him, in his performance costume, tap-dancing shoes sparkling with lights, arms raised to the applause of hundreds of spectators. It was 1982, his time, when every step was a rhythmic tap on Broadway. But now, every step was a worry, because cramps could strike at any moment as soon as he got out of bed in the morning. And it didn't just hurt, it scared him. Scared that what he had once been, a dancer, an artist, would leave him forever, without warning. Jamal hasn't talked much to anyone since his wife died of heart complications. The only sounds in the small apartment are the radio and the distant tram. But then, one early spring afternoon, he was invited to a reunion of former dancers, where old faces gathered to talk about their legs then and their legs now. There, he met Ronnie, his old co-star, now a yoga instructor for seniors. When Jamal told him about his cramps, Ronnie just smiled and pulled a small bag from his bag. "Almonds. You eat these every day. I swear, they saved my life." Jamal burst out laughing. "Such a small seed can be saved?" Ronnie shrugged. "He's small, but he knows how to do things. Like we used to, backstage, out of sight, setting the pace for the show." The next day, Jamal bought a box of almonds. He didn't expect much, but after a week, as he was doing leg swings on the edge of his bed, he noticed. There were no more cramps. His calves were still sore, but they weren't as painful as before. And as he turned to walk out onto the balcony for the first time in months, he noticed that the weather in Chicago was surprisingly nice. The breeze was cool, and his legs felt light. Almonds, which he once considered a rich man's snack, turned out to be a secret muscle tonic. A handful contained nearly 80 milligallons of magnesium, more than any other nut he'd ever heard of. They also contained calcium and vitamin E, which he'd never thought were related to dancing. But now they keep him from curling up at night afraid of cramps. Jamal began eating almonds every day. First a handful, dried, then lightly roasted with a little honey and cinnamon, his ex-wife's Christmas recipe. Each bite was not only nourishment, but also a memory, vivid, warm, and grateful. One Sunday afternoon, Jamal videotaped himself practicing his old tap dance moves, slowly but surely. He sent the video to Ronnie with the message, "I may not be able to tap for 5 minutes like I used to, but I can stand, and I'm standing again, with a handful of nuts." Across Idaho, Helen opened Jamal's video from the link Thomas sent her. She watched intently, clutching the foot diary to her chest. She added a line, "Muscles don't just need nutrition, they need a reason to get up." Spring in Santa Rosa is always a gentle, belated apology after the cold months of Northern California. Clara Reynolds' small cabin sits on a winding road lined with oak trees and lavender. She has lived alone since her husband died, almost 12 years, but she is not lonely. Clara, who, after 40 years as an emergency room nurse, has learned to make friends with silence. But no one could have predicted, not even a seasoned nurse like her, that her body would betray her when she least expected it. One February morning, as Clara was watering the plants on the porch, she felt dizzy. A wave of dizziness swept over her like a gust of wind. She collapsed to the ground. Fortunately, a neighbor heard her faint scream and called 911 in time. The doctor called it a transient ischemic attack, or mini-stroke. It didn't cause major damage, but it was a warning from the body. If you don't change, next time it won't be this mild. The problem? Her blood vessels, her blood pressure, her muscles, all were weakening. And then, like most older Americans, Clara faced a familiar worry. Each step became faltering and uncertain. Her leg muscles cramped when the weather changed or when she forgot to drink water. Where she had once cared for others, she now struggled with a sense of loss of control. After that episode, her doctor advised her to eat more fatty fish, especially salmon, but Clara was hesitant. All her life, she had believed that salmon was too fatty, high in cholesterol, not suitable for older women. It was a belief based on no scientific evidence, just a reservation that had lingered in her mind for years, like many of her older generation. But this time, she chose to trust her body over old prejudices. She started slowly, buying wild salmon from the local farmer's market, seasoning it with sea salt, black pepper, and a squeeze of lemon, then roasting it in the oven. The aroma wafted through the wood-paneled kitchen, taking her back to the last dinner her son had had before leaving for Stanford, the time when he had begged her to try the piece of fish she had refused. Clara smiled at the memory, then took a small bite. Not greasy, not scary, just pure nutrition and memory. After a month of eating salmon 3 times a week, Clara noticed something strange. She no longer had nighttime cramps. She no longer woke up gasping for breath, rubbing her calves. Instead, she slept more deeply. Her skin was more rosy. And every morning, when she went out to water the plants, she found she didn't need to hold on to the railing like before. Clara is not a doctor, but she has believed in observation all her life. And now she sees clearly. The omega-3s from salmon are doing what drugs can't. Reducing the silent inflammation in her muscles, improving blood flow, and giving her back her legs. In an email to her son, she wrote, "You told me to try your favorite fish. Now I get it. Every time I eat it, I feel like I'm giving my body another chance to be strong for another day. Thank you." In Idaho, Helen read the email which Clara had shared in an online senior support group and was overcome with emotion. She printed it out and pasted it into her foot journal below Jamal's note. Under the photo, she wrote, "We, the people who thought we were slowing down, are just learning to walk at a new pace, and food is the first beat of that revival." The April sun in Tucson, Arizona, has a distinct dryness, the kind that makes everything pale under the sun. But in a small garden behind a red brick house, 2 people still regularly tend to their rows of tomatoes and cacti every morning. Maria and Hector Ramirez, a couple of 48 years married. Hector used to be a postal worker. After retiring, he spent most of his time gardening, cleaning, and most importantly, taking care of Maria, his wife, who was increasingly frail due to type 2 diabetes and osteoarthritis of the knee. Lately, she had been getting cramps when sitting for long periods of time or walking in the heat. Whenever this happened, Hector would rub her feet, whispering the same Spanish phrase he had used since they first fell in love. "No te preocupe, mi amor. I'm here. Don't worry, my love. I'm always here." One morning, when Maria collapsed at the dining table, exhausted from shopping, Hector was alarmed. She did not faint, but her eyes were blurred, and her body was shaking. After taking her blood pressure and calling the doctor, he was advised to pay special attention to her hydration and electrolytes. Her body was severely dehydrated in the hot weather, and the cramps were an early sign, something he did not expect. While surfing the web, Hector read about coconut water, dubbed nature's sports drink, because it's rich in potassium, magnesium, calcium, and a little sodium, perfect for keeping the body hydrated and avoiding muscle cramps. He recalled that as a child, his mother used to give him fresh coconut water whenever he had a cold or was feeling tired. So the next day, he cycled nearly 5 miles to the Asian grocery store, the only place in the area that sold pure, unsweetened, preservative-free coconut water. He bought 3 bottles. By the time he got home, his shirt was soaked with sweat, but he still held the cold bottles like treasures. Maria was not used to the taste at first. A little bland, not as sweet as soda, but Hector mixed some lemon juice and a few mint leaves, added a slice of cucumber. She drank a glass without realizing it, and from that day on, he made it for her every morning, as a ritual. After just a week, the cramps subsided. Maria no longer had to push herself up from a chair. Her walks in the garden were no longer interrupted by a sharp pain in her calf. Hector wrote down each day in a small calendar. No cramps, more smiles. But what touched Hector most was not her physical recovery. It was the way Maria started singing again in the mornings. She would hum a few lines in the kitchen while making coffee and sipping coconut water with lemon. That sound, after nearly 3 years of silence due to depression after diabetes complications, was the most beautiful love song he had ever heard. One night he said to her, "You know, Coconut water helps you get well, but it is you that helps me live again." Maria smiled, her eyes sparkling under the kitchen light. "Then don't forget to add ice tomorrow. I like it cold, like when we dated at the plaza." Helen, the first woman in the story, received the email from her online support group retelling the story. She read it over and over, then silently pasted Hector's last line onto the next page of her notebook. She added, "Happiness is sometimes not having painless legs, but having someone hold your hand when you need to stand up." That night, Helen's 28-year-old niece, Emily, came home from a long business trip to Portland. She had been a nurse for 5 years, strong, agile, in control, but as she sat across from her grandmother over a cup of hot tea, her eyes grew heavy. "Grandma, I feel exhausted these days," Emily said softly. "The hospital is so crowded. Every day there are old people who get cramps, who fall, and have no one to take care of them. Sometimes I feel like I'm treating their bodies and forgetting about their hearts." Helen said nothing. She just pushed the cup of tea toward her grandson. In the rising steam, there was a faint scent of fresh ginger, mildly spicy, warm, the taste that had helped her through the cold winters in her Maine home, where ginger tea was believed to be the only thing that could warm numb feet at night. Emily took a sip, then closed her eyes. "I never noticed, but ginger tea makes me feel strangely calm." Helen smiled. "When we are young, we think that being strong means not needing help. But when we are old, we learn that true strength comes from the gentlest things: a hand rubbing our feet, a handful of almonds, or a cup of ginger tea on a cold night." The granddaughter sat silently. In an instant, all the medical knowledge, all the theories she had ever learned seemed to recede into the background, giving way to a deeper, quieter lesson. Ginger tea, the thing she often prescribed for her patients, now became a symbol of the gentle care that all old people need. The following week, Emily began to change. She brought fresh ginger to the nurse's lounge, made tea for her colleagues. She encouraged patients to try a cup before bed, and she drank it herself every night, not just to fight inflammation and get the blood flowing, but to remember that each day of care is a bond between generations, a silent legacy of love, of people like Helen. Ginger, not only is it a powerful anti-inflammatory that helps soothe cramped muscles, improve circulation, and relieve muscle pain, but it's also a quiet warmth that reminds us that the body needs to be soothed, not just healed. A month later, Helen completed her foot diary. On the last page, she pasted photos of everyone who had shared their stories. Thomas with a plate of greens, Jamal in tap dancing, Clara with grilled salmon, Maria and Hector with a jug of coconut water, Emily pouring ginger tea. Under the photo, she wrote a line: "Our body is a piece of music, and each dish is a note. When we know how to listen, know how to nourish, we will find our own rhythm again." If you are in your 60s, 70s, or older, if you have ever had cramps in the middle of the night, had to hold on to the wall every time you got out of bed, thought you would never be able to walk for hours like you used to, remember, it is never too late to start healing from the smallest things. Maybe a banana in the morning, a handful of almonds in the afternoon, a glass of coconut water on a summer afternoon, a slice of salmon by the fire, or simply a warm cup of ginger tea. But deeper than that, it is a reminder. You deserve a healthy body, strong legs, and a life not limited by the fear of aging. And if you have a story like Helen, Thomas, Jamal, or Maria, leave a comment below. Maybe your story will inspire someone else to start their own recovery journey. Please share this video with your parents, grandparents, or loved ones who are silently suffering from muscle pain every night. One small action can make a big difference. And if you find stories like this touching your heart, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next healing journeys. Because in tomorrow's video, we will continue with a new story titled 6 Foods That Help Prevent Cramps in the Elderly, Keep Muscles Strong Until Age 90. A more detailed, in-depth nutritional journey, specifically for the elderly who want to proactively take care of their bodies from the inside. See you in the next video. We still have a lot to go together.